Hey, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you might be joining us from in the world today. My name is Meg Alexander, and I am, as always, honored and excited to get to host another Power to Fly virtual event. Now, before we dive in, I just want to go through some quick housekeeping items. These will be especially important if maybe this is your first event with Power to Fly. And if that's the case, then hi, welcome. We're so happy to meet you. Now, the love is no less real for my frequent flyers, y'all. I absolutely adore seeing your familiar names and faces and avatars in the chat. So thank you all for joining us today, whether this is your first Power to Fly event or your 400th. Now, the big thing to know about Power to Fly and our virtual events is that they are about you. They're about our audience members and making sure that you all get the value that you came to get from today's event. So you can participate in a couple different ways if you'd like. You are welcome, as always, to turn your turn your cameras on and share your smiling, maskless faces with us safely. But truly, y'all, no pressure to look Instagram perfect, okay? I think I'm on day 4 of the dry shampoo, make the hair bigger combo. So truly, we don't care if you're coming to us from your living room couch or corner office. You could be in a 3-piece suit or your bathrobe. We do not care. We just want to meet you where you are today. Now, if you do want to join us, but you don't want to do so on camera, that's okay. You can always participate in the chat. I see we've already got people chiming in there, so thank you all for diving in. If you'd like, please feel free to head over there and let us know where you're joining from. I'm coming to you from Toledo, Ohio. This is land that belonged to the Fox, Kickapoo, and Potawatomi tribes in my area. And if you know, you're more than welcome to share whose land you're on with all the rest of us. I see we've got people coming in from North Carolina, Seattle, Oklahoma City, Detroit, Michigan. Hi, Gretchen. Atlanta, Central India, Brooklyn, the UK, Dallas, Texas. Y'all loving this. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, just know that as we are interacting with our fellow attendees, connecting with our speakers and everything, just make sure that, as always, we are leading from a place of kindness and respect. Now, what I want to direct your attention to now is, again, other ways that you can participate in today's event. So if you want to chime in the chat, we would love to see it. Let us know if you've got questions. If you want us to dive in deeper on a topic that we're talking about, let us know. I'm going to be in the chat the entire time and monitoring stuff over there. So if you've got questions that you want to ask our speakers, make sure that you let us know. Now, today's session is being recorded. Now, what that means for all of you is you get to relax. You don't have to take notes. You get to sit back and enjoy the conversation that I'm about to have with our guest today. Now, if you are curious or if you hear something today that is just so mind-blowing that you cannot wait to share it with a friend or a coworker or a relative, you don't have to. In about 4 to 5 business days, Power to Fly is going to email everyone that registered for today's event, and y'all will get a link to where you can rewatch the recording when it's posted on powertofly.com. Now, if you cannot wait 4 to 5 business days, you don't have to. You can always head over to our YouTube channel. The recording is posted usually within about 20 minutes of the end of the live stream, but you can generally see it same day. So you can head over there and check out the recording, share the link a lot sooner, whatever you'd like to do. Now, I do always recommend you check out our YouTube channel. I'll share links for all of this in the chat thread as we go, but I recommend you check out our YouTube channel. We've got a huge archive on there of a bunch of our favorite past events. But if you head over to powertofly.com, that is where the mother lode is. So you can take a look at our entire archive going back to the invention of the Chat and Learn series. So really, really great resources to avail yourself of on the website. But like I said, any way that you get the get these lessons or send out these tips and stuff that you hear with us, anything we can do to make that easier is what we want to do for y'all. So now I do want to encourage y'all, write those questions in the chat. You had opportunities to ask a question at registration. That's some of the questions that we're going to be going through today. But if you asked a question and you're not sure if we're going to get to it, ask it in the chat. Do you want to add some extra context or details onto a question that you asked? Send it in the chat. You all took time with us to be here live, you took time out of your day to spend with us. We want to reward you for that. So if you have questions, make sure you ask them, ask early, ask often. That way I can hopefully make sure that you all get the value that you came to get from today's event. Now, last thing I'm going to do before I introduce you to our fabulous speakers today is tell you a little bit more about Contentful. Now, they are a Power to Fly partner. I'm going to share the link with you in just a second to their Power to Fly page, where you can check out all kinds of great information on this company. You can take a look at the overview. That'll give you some information on their company culture. Events tab is going to have stuff like today that they've partnered on with us. You can also check out events and the About tabs for different resources for Contentful, blog posts, that kind of stuff. And then, as always, the ever important jobs tab is going to be where you can search for and apply to roles right from powertofly.com. Now, just to be sure, or just to be clear, if you do apply for roles via powertofly.com, make sure that you complete all steps that you are indicated to, so that way you can ensure that your application is fully submitted. Now, I'm really excited to introduce you to our speakers today. First up, we have Jigyasa Mathur. She's a director of software engineering with over 15 years of experience in tech leadership. Now, Jigyasa specializes in building and leading high-performance engineering teams that deliver exceptional products and services. She serves as the director of engineering, and before this, she led core innovation teams at Babbel, which was the world's leading language learning platform. Additionally, as a co-founder, Jigyasa has spearheaded 2 startups in the B2B and B2C space, serving as their CTO. Jigyasa, thank you so much for joining us today. Is there anything else that you want our audience members to know about you?
No, I think I'm just going to say I'm really excited to be here, and I hope my journey gets kind of some sort of validation or some sort of help to folks struggling. And I'm happy to guide, from all aspects. So like my pro stays here, I've been in different areas. I've worked at B2B, B2C. I started my career as an engineer, so just a software engineer, going through the ranks, junior and then senior, then picked a path, actually took a haywire there, went to do my own thing, then came back into management and been rising the ranks since. So I know what different journeys could look like. So feel free to ask any questions around any of those.
Love, love, love it. Thank you so much, Jigyasa, for joining us. All right, now joining Jigyasa on stage is going to be Lillian Bitner. Now, Lillian's career started in laboratory health science research with a degree in y'all, English is the only language I speak. How is it this hard? Lillian's degree is in molecular biology from Yale University. I think you might have heard of it. She later attended a coding boot camp and began the next phase of her career as a software engineer. Lillian has worked at a range of small to medium-sized startups as she continues to expand her experience and technical expertise. Lillian, we're so happy to have you join us today. Would you like to let our audience members know anything else about you?
Sure, and thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, so I've been at Contentful for about 9 months now. I'm based out of Denver, Colorado. And just a fun fact about me is that my favorite food is pizza, and I'm on a lifelong journey of finding the best pizza in the world. And so that greatly motivates me to travel. So yeah, I'm just really excited to be here to talk about my experience as a software engineer and pivoting paths from laboratory science to software engineering. So thanks for having me.
I love it. And, not to distract from the subject at hand, but do you think Chicago deep dish pizza is actually pizza or is it lasagna? Because opinions are strong in this house.
Yeah, I think it's apples and oranges. I think I don't think it's necessarily what the standard pizza should be, but it's still tasty. I'm not going to deny that.
I think it's one of those things that like Marco Polo would probably yell at you about, right? It's like, no, this isn't pizza. It's not, it's something else. But yeah, I like it. I like the agree to disagree. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. All right. Rounding out our trifecta of people from Contentful, we're going to talk to Eddie Chung. Now, Eddie is a versatile software engineer with a background in UI UX design, emphasizing user-centric development. Eddie is passionate about software innovation and maintains a humble approach to continual learning and growth. Eddie, very excited to welcome you to the stage today. What else should our audience know about you?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Eddie. I'm actually based in Berlin, Germany. I'm originally from Hong Kong, and I also lived in Australia for a long time before I moved to Germany. Fun fact about me, I actually, a long time ago, I used to be a sponsored skateboarder. Unfortunately, that pro skateboarding career did not work out, but I'm totally super happy that I just got into tech, and I love to be here today, and hopefully I can help some of you guys out in terms of transitioning and getting into tech and all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eddie. I think my limited knowledge of skateboarding ended with Tony Hawk pro skating. Like my parents were not going to let me on anything that required me to wear a helmet. I'm too clumsy on 2 feet. But just as a random curious question, what was your favorite trick?
I gotta say Ollie, super
That's so
basic.
Oh, yes. All right. I can picture
Without
that.
Ollie, nothing is gonna happen. So anyway.
I love it. Thank you so much, Eddie. Thank you for sharing that with us. All right, so we're going to go in and dive on into questions today. But again, I just want to remind y'all, since you all are, took time out of your day to be here with us live, we want to remind you, you have the power to drive today's conversation. So if you've got questions, add them in the chat. If you are not sure if we're going to get to your question, add it in the chat. Remy's asking if you could pop up an Ollie for us real quick, Eddie. I'm guessing no, but we'll hold that for the end. Maybe that'll be our grand finale, right? All right, so let me get Jigyasa up here. There we go. All right, so let's go into some of the questions we were asked first. A lot of people wanted to talk about the mindset of being a junior software engineer. So if you are a junior engineer and you're looking for your first role, what do you think people should keep in mind in that search? Lillian, do you want to start us?
Sure. Yeah, happy to start us off. I was a junior software engineer looking for my first role not too long ago. So, I think I would say some of my learnings during that experience were, I think it's important when you're looking for that first role to be really open to many different industries. So, I know that a lot of the motivations behind switching into software engineering and tech can be that you want to be a part of a certain industry, that you find that particularly fulfilling. But I think as part of a first role, my experience with that was really that it was really just a kind of a stepping stone and an opportunity to learn and be kind of a sponge to learn all that you can from everyone around you. And it's quite a jump from learning to be a software engineer to actually working with production code. So I think with that, I think it's also important to find mentorship opportunities with your first role. I had an incredible mentor when I was a junior engineer that I could seek guidance from and really learn the ins and outs of working at that company and creating production level code as an engineer. So I think, if you can really find some great mentorship opportunities in that first junior role, that is really key. So I think those are my main takeaways for junior developers or tips there.
I like that. Eddie or Jigyasa, do you have anything you'd like to add here?
I do actually. I think so as a junior software engineer, I would say pair programming. So especially with another senior engineer, because you definitely learn so much from the person, because especially when you pay attention to how the senior software engineer debug, and also just kind of how the person walked through the problem, and then to find out what the problem is and how to actually go through different steps to find the solutions. And I find it super helpful, and I learn a ton from my senior engineers, especially on my team. So
excellent. Okay. Let's keep moving with our question. Okay, we got one question out of the chat here, and actually I did want to touch on this earlier on. So this person had wanted to know, Lillian, if you could share what wanted you, or what caused you to want to transition into software engineering.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I was doing laboratory research and had that degree in molecular biology, but I wanted to, I guess at that point in my life, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I didn't know what I didn't know as well. I think what drew me into engineering was one, I was always more left-brained, like I've always been science and math and black and white, and those things really compute well for me. And so kind of applying the logical reasoning skills that I've developed, that made a lot of sense to me, and kind of solving logic puzzles all day. But also I love the fact that with engineering, it's very industry agnostic. So you can work in really any industry. And that was what was exciting to me, because I didn't know what I wanted to be a part of and how I wanted to make a difference. And so to me, learning the skills of coding was really just kind of gaining a skill set that I can apply in many different contexts. And so that was my motivation for kind of taking that chance originally. And it paid off, because I really enjoy it, which has been great so far. So I hope that that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Jigyasa, would you like to share what inspired your transition as well?
So I never really transitioned. I always kind of knew very early on when I was young that I like coding. I got exposed to computer science, and that was it. It was a typical love at first sight and never left the track. The only thing that I transitioned into was various aspects of technology. So I started off with hardcore engineering. I did all of it. I've done back-end, front-end, the tech support even for a little while. So I've covered really all aspects, and then settled on management because that's apparently where my true passion lies. Eventually, when I did know what I wanted to do, but it's always been technology for me.
I like that highlight of you get started, you find what you love, but you don't necessarily know what you're going to do within it. And so I think that's a great thing to highlight. Thank you.
Sure.
Eddie, how about you? What was if you could highlight one thing that really caused you to want to transition, what would you think that would be?
Oh, so yeah, I worked as a graphic designer actually from very early on, and then I transitioned to kind of web design, and then product design, and then software engineer. I must say that it's getting my hands dirty actually coding it. For some reason, I just found that coding it and then building the software, it's incredibly satisfying. I can see it works or doesn't work, or completely broken, but I think it's just the sky's the limit. Like, you can do so much with it. It's very motivating.
Okay, thank you all for sharing that with us. We really, really appreciate it. All right, so Jigyasa, I want to go to you next with this. A lot of people had questions about how to advocate to stay as an individual contributor when switching careers later in life and trying to combat that resistance. I feel like there is kind of a little bit of a supposition that if you've been in the field for long enough, you'll eventually just move into management. And I think, we have entire chats about how to make that choice, that singular, just that one part of it. So let's talk a little bit about what this looked like for you. How did you advocate to stay as an IC as you were moving around?
So I think that might have been the problem of the industry a few years ago. So 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that was a real challenge, that at some point you're a senior engineer, you've been doing it for long enough, everybody respected you. What next automatically meant management. Thankfully, we've matured enough to move away from that. Now we have another stream. It's called staff engineering, and you can be senior staff engineer. There's principal engineers. So even in my role as a director, I have a senior staff engineer who's just my peer, and I turn to them. They're just, we are partners in crime on most of the stuff. So there's a product peer and there's a technology peer for me as well. So I say that it's a beautiful thing to know what you enjoy doing. And if you know what you want to do, and if you know what your ideal day looks like, and if that's coding, and if that's thinking about architecture, go for it. There's a whole world of opportunities in that direction. It's actually sometimes easier to find management candidates because management is about people, and you can translate those skills from other fields as well. Yes, coming from technology gives you an edge, but we've had managers that have come from adjacent fields like quality assurance, for instance, or product. But software engineering and being really good at it, rising through the ranks there purely on the base of your technical skills, that is hard to find. So I say, if you want to stay as IC, by all means, and there's plenty of growth opportunity in there for you, so don't even think about it.
Okay, I like this. We've got some good follow-up questions to this, so we'll try and keep moving here. Joel had asked in the chat, what is your biggest advice for someone who wants to try and stand out from the rest of the field when the work can feel the same? So this is a good question. If you are going to be the person that's creating this, if you are, the guy in the chair doing the software engineering, how do you try and make sure that you stand out when work from the other side of it might look the same to to somebody who's not in the trenches?
Do you mean for the hiring managers? Do you mean for the recruiters, or from what aspect?
The question does not specify. I would say probably in the eyes of a hiring manager. So if you're trying to stand out, what would you recommend an applicant do?
Okay. So I can share my perspective of it because we look at this quite a bit. So for recruiters and hiring manager, thanks for clarifying, Joel. So it depends on your level, really. So let's say if you're starting out, the only thing you have to offer is the initiative you've taken, the things you've tried. So stay, while you're even looking for a job, try to be creative, try to try things out, build applications, build your portfolio, so to speak, because as yet your resume isn't speaking for you. So you've got to add stuff that you can, and it shows initiative. So whenever we're hiring people at any level, there are multiple aspects that we see. There's technical skill, of course, that matters. And some of it comes from your portfolio. Some of it comes from any open source work you've done. Some of it comes from your freelance or your hobby projects, for instance. Those are really interesting. But there are other aspects too. So if you're not a junior, you've been in the industry, you've probably shown or demonstrated technical leadership at some point. So talk about that in your resumes too, how you've led teams, how you've been a partner to product or adjacent fields. So usually software engineering is rarely ever about just technology. It's at least about product and marketing and design and all these fields that have to come together for a successful product. So almost all good companies are looking for well-rounded engineers. Nobody usually looks for code monkeys. So that's one, not to be harsh, but sometimes this is a mistake I see people do, that all they care about is code. So even in interviews, if you're asked a question about how do you collaborate with your product manager or what kind of interest do you have in the product, they kind of channel it back to technology and code. So that's one mistake you can definitely make. You are most likely interested in adjacent fields. And here's a secret tip. We are interested in looking at that as a well-rounded individual building products. So that's one thing that I'd say would separate you out. If you come across as somebody who thinks more than just code, who thinks about products and technology as an enabler for that product. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I like this. Eddie, you're nodding a ton. Do you have anything you want to add here? Oh, you're on mute. That's okay. No worries. Lillian, how about you? Nope. All right. We'll keep moving. All right. We did have another question that came in the chat. I'm not sure if we're gonna be able to address this or not. JobRun had asked what are the best platforms for software jobs? So I'm guessing like places to go to look for them. Obviously I recommend powerfly.com. But are there any place else that y'all have found roles, or that you people kind of talk about these things in other spaces?
I think geography matters. So I know for a fact that Germany, for instance, we rely heavily on LinkedIn. That would be a universal, honestly. So LinkedIn Jobs, LinkedIn Recruit, that's usually been consistent wherever I've worked in the world. We've always turned to LinkedIn Recruit. So if all else fails, at least start there. But I'd always recommend talk to some of the folks, some of the professionals in your field, in your geography, because a lot of geographies have very specific websites or specific places that are successful for that location. So maybe there's something specific to Denver. If it's not a remote location, that might be better. There's Glassdoor at some places. So LinkedIn first, and then your geography specific, connect to your peers.
Absolutely like that. And super important, y'all, for those of you who are thinking of transitioning, from one field into another, if you don't want people to know that that's what's going on, obviously LinkedIn is not the way to do that since it's public, but your Power to Fly profile is not. So just so you're aware, transition your little hearts away and tell everybody what you're trying to move into, because nobody's going to be able to see it apart from Power to Fly admins and then job partners. So, go nuts. Okay, let's keep moving down our question list here. All right, Eddie, I want to go to you first on this one. This person had asked, could you provide insights into the qualities or attributes that tech employers value most in candidates who lack a traditional tech background? So let's talk about this. You're coming out of not what everyone else is. What do you think that applicants should be thinking about highlighting in their resume?
I think, yeah, other diverse skills that you might have. Perhaps, you work on a project that you actually did some project management, or you have exceptional communication skills, or basically just highlighting those, and also talk about those. Talk about the projects that you worked on, and then, I actually, especially during interviews, I actually structure them with a star method.
I
It's
was
quite
literally
popular.
just going to ask that. Yeah.
Yeah. So situation, task, action, results. You can Google a little bit more, but basically just I found it a really helpful structure, way to structure your answer, and you deep dive and you go through that, talk about your projects and really highlight other parts of your skills, and just talk about them and how your other diverse set of skills help to succeed, help the team succeed, how to actually provide values for the team. So I think those are quite useful.
Yeah, I like that. It makes a ton of sense, really trying to illustrate and draw back, like, yeah, here's what I did there, and this is why it relates to what we're doing now.
Sure.
Honestly, so much of interviewing, whether you're transitioning or not, is being able to make those leaps for people and make those communications, or not communications, sorry, connections. And you're trying to short track it for the recruiter or for the hiring manager. That's basically all you're trying to do. And I feel like a lot of people, this isn't explained to us, right? Like, I was never told that that's what you were trying to do. I was just told, like, here's how you write your resume. It's like, no. They don't have time for that. Nobody has time for that. So quick, fast, to the point, be obvious. I like this.
For sure.
All right.
If I may, Meg, I just want to
Yeah,
chime in with
please.
one little thing. So folks that are not coming from CS background, one apprehension that honestly we genuinely have when we are hiring is how comfortable are you with the fundamentals? Honestly, in this world, in this day and age, with all the resources that you have, that's the only leg up people with degrees probably have, that we've spent a lot of time going to the fundamentals. So that's one thing that I'd say, be prepared for, try to highlight when you're speaking to a recruiter, and actually spend time it. Don't just fake it till you make it. Just go into the why. So it's not just important to get a task done. You would most likely, especially if you're coming from a different field, you would likely be asked, why do you think that is? Or, how does it tie into the basics? If you're doing the JavaScript coding exercise, it won't be important that the code runs and the thing works. It's important that you understand why it works. So don't forget that key aspect if you're not coming from that background. We take that for granted with folks that hopefully have studied and remember some of it. But if you're not from the background, that's one thing to keep in mind.
That's a good call out. Thank you for that. It actually leads in, there was a question in the chat here from Brandy saying, was it more difficult to find a job with a boot camp versus a traditional CS degree? If yes, either way, did you take any additional steps to get your foot in the door for interviews or positions? So let's talk about this. Lillian, you want to start us?
Sure. Yeah, I can definitely speak to this with some firsthand experience, given that I majored in molecular bio and did a coding bootcamp. So I would say when I was graduating my coding bootcamp, it was about 5 months into the COVID-19 pandemic. So the economic conditions were somewhat similar to how they are today, just a little bit dire and a little bit difficult to land a job. So I would say, I think I landed a job within a month of graduating my bootcamp. And the friction that I experienced when trying to find a job, I wouldn't attribute to the fact that I did graduate from a boot camp. I would more attribute it to the economic conditions. I actually really felt that there's a lot of value that employers actually see from people that do graduate from a boot camp. One of them being, it's kind of a courageous and brave thing to do, to kind of switch careers and to kind of bet on yourself and learn an entirely new skill. And to go out into the world and try to land a job with that new skill. And so I think, you kind of made this commitment, and that really shows through when you're looking for a new job from a boot camp. And additionally, I think like what Eddie was saying earlier, you bring a lot of new skills and perspectives and ideas when you're coming from a different background beforehand. You haven't necessarily just been on the computer science train your whole life. When you're coming from an original job in laboratory science, you have different skills that you can bring. And most hiring managers want to build a team that's very diverse and that has a lot of people that bring many different ideas and skill sets to the table. And so I think, as Eddie was mentioning earlier, it's really important to leverage that. And I think during my job search originally, right when I graduated my boot camp, that was really imperative, was leveraging my experience beforehand, because I can prove that I can learn new skills because I did this boot camp and I can go through these tech coding interviews. But mentioning that I am great with, collaboration. I was a college athlete. I value teamwork. I am good at presenting things because I was in a laboratory. Like really leveraging those skills that you had originally, I think is really important to landing that first role after a boot camp.
Heck yes. And like, y'all just like pay attention to this, like really, really remember this. The things that like make you the odd man out, right? Like nobody else has a background in art history. That doesn't matter. Okay. That's the good thing, because guess what? No one else has that and you are bringing it. So if you can show, hey, art history is important because blah, 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 then yeah, excellent. Taking the things that set you apart and making them the reason you are set above everybody else. Like really, truly, maximize this stuff, because what makes you different from other people makes you very well suited for, for a specific reason. You know what I mean? Like these are really important things to remember. Okay, here. Let's talk a little bit about some of the technical skills. A lot of people wanted to know about how difficult it was to find a position that if you're coming out of boot camps versus a traditional degree. You touched on this for us, Lillian, but do you think that it's more difficult one way versus the other? I feel like we've heard this both from people who have CS degrees but didn't do boot camps, and people who did do boot camps and don't have CS degrees. And it seems to be kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other. In your experience, do you think it's harder to do it one way versus the other?
I guess I can't speak to both experiences, so I don't necessarily know. I guess maybe from a hiring manager, that would probably be better perspective. But I think boot camps also are becoming more and more common these days.
Yeah.
So it's a really quite a common path. I know that pretty much half of our team based in Denver at Contentful are from boot camps, if that sort of gives any perspective around that. And again, I think there's pros and cons to both paths. So
yeah. Well, I like what you had touched on by saying that like it shows initiative, right? It shows courage by being willing to like make a change and do something different. But there's so much of that momentum that like once you stop being driven into doing these things by like friends or your family or peers or whatever, like we all just kind of slow down, right? So being able to show like, oh, I wanted to do this so badly that I went out and did things when everybody else was like, I don't want to do things. Can we just cancel the plans? So like that's huge, right? Like that's big in and of itself. One of the things that you also talked about was this idea of like trying to start over and learn something else. And most people, especially if you're doing a boot camp, a lot of people do this while they have another job. If people are unemployed while they're going through this and trying to learn all of these things, do you think that it's important that they spend the time not just job seeking, but like trying to level up their skills? Or do you think that it's less wise to spend time learning programming languages as opposed to trying to get into the field?
Yeah. So I think in terms of just learning programming languages, I don't necessarily think it's a great approach in terms of preparing for technical interviews or kind of getting ready to interview and dive deep into the world of software engineering. I think I say that for a few reasons. I know that most technical interviews are really language agnostic, and I know that what hiring managers are trying to really test during the interview process is not that you understand how to type out a certain language. It's more about your critical thinking skills. Can I solve this problem? How do you solve this problem? Do you think of these sort of edge cases? How do you communicate the problem, etc.? And so it's really less so about those minute details around the language itself, and more so around, and granted, depending on what the position you're applying for, if you're looking at a front-end engineering position mainly, it is really advantageous to know the ins and outs of JavaScript and really have an understanding of the why, like Jigyasa had mentioned earlier, understanding why something is happening, because that's certainly worthwhile during the interview process and is very applicable to your job as well. But I think leveling up your skills, I would recommend to do so would be really to focus on the fundamentals of a handful or one or two languages, and also potentially working on a project that you're passionate about, because I think that came that was a really great thing that I noticed throughout my interview processes in the past few years, is that if I had a project to talk about that I was passionate about, that went a long way. And I also learned a lot when I built something on my own about something I was passionate about, and dove deep into a different skill in that sense, and dove deep into JavaScript, for example. That's one way that I learned various aspects of JavaScript. And so I think side projects like a portfolio, et cetera, that have been mentioned before is way more worth your time than kind of learning a plethora of programming languages.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it makes a ton of sense, right? You know, like our brains are wired so that we learn best at play, honestly. So if you're doing something that you find engaging, you are far more likely to retain the information than you are otherwise. You know, my husband is interested in engineering and machine learning. And so one of the things that he's doing is he's getting ready to automate my entire garden next year. That sounds terrifying, but you know, it's something he wants to mess around with. So truly think about that kind of stuff. You know, it's one of the things we talk about if people are trying to level up their skill set is utilizing the skills they have for, do something like a charity project, ask one of your favorite charities if they need a website designed, if they need, find ways that you can utilize those skills in a way that you enjoy, that's going to help you learn and really retain these skills and retain the information, but it's also going to show, hiring managers that this is something that you're so interested in, you do it not outside of work. This is really important to highlight. All right, let's keep moving on our questions here. Okay, this person had said they're interested in moving into computer science, but they have no experience in the area. So if you've got somebody who thinks that they might be interested in tech and they're curious about just kind of getting the lay of the land, what would you recommend they do? What should they go out and sign up for a boot camp? Should they go talk to somebody that they know that works in the field? If they know nothing, where should they go to try and kind of get the lay of the land here? Eddie, you want to start us off?
Wow. Yeah, sure. I think first of all, you gotta when you mentioned about tech, like it's really big, this area. So I think to firstly find out what you're really interested in, whether it's AI or web development, to and also which industry, so I think, it's I think find out more about tech and learn more about tech and find out which part of tech you want to get into.
Lillian, when you were looking at this, what was your first step?
Yeah, it's a good question. I started diving into there's an infinite amount of online resources for any sort of field in tech. And so my first step was not quite jumping to the boot camp, but more so going online and going onto a Udemy JavaScript course and just being like, what is JavaScript? I have no idea what this is. Let me just learn how this is even working. What is this even referring to? Kind of diving deep into a few online courses and playing around with things on my own and trying to just figure things out. Just testing the waters for me was all it took to be like, oh, this is kind of fun. This is pretty powerful. I really enjoy this. But again, I think I also talked to a few acquaintances and mentors that I've had in the past that do have experience in the tech field. And I think learning from their guidance and what they thought about the field itself, I think, kind of pulling from all of those resources really helped collectively to make the decision to dive right into tech.
Yeah, I like that. And I like that you highlighted Udemy, because I feel like this is something we get asked a lot. And it's very tempting, right? Because you want to get started, you want to make sure that you're on the right footing. It's very tempting to be like, oh, great, so I'll just sign up for like these 6 courses and I'll take that certification and I'll do this and I'll do that and those other things. And just remember, y'all, don't throw good money after bad. Okay, try and get the stuff you can for free first before you start spending money on courses, because you don't know necessarily that that's going to be the area you want to dive into. So Khan Academy, KHAN Academy.com, huge, y'all. There's tons of places you can learn things for free. This is the internet. We all learn how to do everything from YouTube anyway. So truly, look into these things. It's not to say that you shouldn't spend money on these areas, especially if this is where you want your career to go, but just be careful, y'all. Try and do the free stuff first. Linda's also sharing in the chat here, freecodecamp.org also has some good certifications you can get. So thank you all for sharing those, all that kind of stuff in the chat as well. All right, let's keep moving here. Okay, my next question, Lillian, I'm gonna go to you first on this one. How do you recommend that people balance continuous learning and then professional development while you're also trying to have a work-life balance and keep pace in the tech industry? How have you managed to balance all these things? And then we'll go around and ask how everybody else is balancing them, because I always like these questions, so apologies, y'all.
Yeah, and I'm curious other people's techniques as well. I'm continually learning how to continually learn, and balancing that in my life. And I think some of the strategies that have worked for me have been to really get really granular with what I want to learn about and kind of what I'm really interested in learning about, and also what I think I can really improve on in understanding. So kind of really listing those things out for me, and kind of creating this reference sheet that's kind of an ever expanding list, has been really useful, because with that list, I then sort of dedicate time each week. Like I block out an hour on the calendar each week to try and kind of chip away at the block of this ever expanding list. And during that hour, I kind of just let myself go. Like I let myself kind of dive deep into a Udemy course or a front-end master's course, or watch these recordings from this one React conference, or look into this long thread that someone was explaining something with back-end Ruby something. Like I just kind of let myself kind of go down that rabbit hole, because I know that we talk a lot about in our field, oh, we can't go down that rabbit hole, but this is like the hour of the week that I do just dive deep into the rabbit hole of things and kind of continue to learn those from my list that I've made. And then also kind of continually engaging in a lot of external spaces as well has been helpful for me. Like I try to go to meetups that I'm interested in, like JavaScript meetups that are occurring in Denver, subscribing to newsletters for various technologies and announcements, and going to conferences. I think that's one of the larger goals for myself for the next few months, is to attend a large scale conference. But yeah, I'm curious to hear from others around their techniques for how they balance this.
Jigyasa, would you like to go next?
Sure. So I think Lillian touched on a very important point here, that be very specific about what you want to learn. And I'll say the counterpart to that is be okay with what you're not learning. So let's say you pick up management like I did. So I'm not the best person to ask about the latest trends in JavaScript. And that's okay. I can do this. I can give you tips. I can tell how you can excel in management. So it's important to be okay to be lagging behind in some fields. Like Eddie said, tech is vast. I could be doing a million things, and there's only 24 hours a day. I have an 8-hour job and a 4-year-old. So there's only so much time I'm going to have. So I have to be okay with what I'm not investing time in. That said, with new topics popping up like AI that are really interesting to me and I want to learn, at that time, I need to be okay to trade that in for the management learning time that I carve out. So be very specific about what is it that you want to focus on when, and be okay about leaving behind the rest for the time being. I keep switching. So when ChatGPT came, I think I got obsessive for a little while. I did a lot of prompt engineering, 5 courses on Udemy and whatnot. And then I moved on to something else. And again, that's okay. For those few weeks, I wasn't catching up on other things. So I think that's the first thing that's going to kill you, the guilt, because there's so much to learn. And this industry moves so fast, you could be spending 5 hours a day learning and you'd still be lagging behind. So, if you just manage what it is that you really want to invest in learning-wise, that's half the battle won. And then I have a rule that I carve out 1 hour a day, every day. It could be in the morning, because like I said, I have a young boy, so don't have the luxury of sleeping in late. So I wake up early. So I either do that before my work day or before I go to bed, because that's the quiet time, but it's 1 hour every day. And the third tip that I'd give you is that learn something that's actually interesting to you, because you're only going to keep that up if it's not a chore. If you're doing it because, oh my God, I'm going to lag behind in my field if I don't, you're probably not going to get to it. And Netflix is there to ruin it all anyways. So, just be actually interested. So I let myself get carried away when something interesting came along, and that's cool. So those are the three things I keep in mind.
I sat through, I shouldn't say sat through, I've listened to it at least 3 times, but there was a podcast with some of the Imagineers from Disney, because nobody can make work look like play like Disney can. And that's literally one of the things that they talk about a ton, is this idea of approaching work the way we approach play. And so you're like playing a game with somebody and like, oh yeah, we're going to play a restaurant and we're going to make chicken liver pies and then this and then that. And nobody ever stops and is like, okay, but wait, is there gluten in that? Because I don't know if this is going to be okay. Right. We just sort of play and you explore a little bit and you go with where your interest is. This is literally exactly what she's talking about. Okay. That is how you get your brain to actually remember the things you want it to remember. And, following basically what I do all the time, y'all. I'm constantly chasing the dopamine. Okay. That's all we're doing. We're trying to make sure that whatever we're doing is interesting. So I very much love this idea of relying on where your interest takes you and not saying like, oh, well, I spent 5 days last week on ChatGPT. I can't just throw that all away now. Yeah, you can. You're not throwing it away. You're putting it on the shelf. You're going to go explore another interest. And later on, when the AI actually says, hey, I'm taking over, then you might go back and you'll dust off that 5 days worth of AI stuff. And that's fine, y'all. That's great. I love the moderation aspect of this. Excellent. Eddie, how do you feel about this? What does balance look like for you? Do you approach it like Lillian or Jigyasa do, or do you have maybe a different take on trying to stay current and stay up to date on all of the different areas of life?
Try to not to go mad. Yeah, well, actually pretty similar approach. I first of all pick the new technologies I want to learn. Actually, I go for the side project route. So I build something simple, even maybe a website, a web app, using the technologies that I want to learn from. I want to learn, and then and I would just use those technologies and build something. And yeah, similar to Jigyasa, same, just dedicated 1 hour in the morning, just kind of work on it. Another thing is I try to focus one thing at a time. So instead of just really like, okay, switching my focus to, okay, tomorrow I'm going to work on AI, and the next day I'm going to work on my whatever skateboarding blog or something. So yeah, just try to finish one thing and then you move on to the next. I think that's that's kind of helpful.
Like that. Okay. Let's see. We did have a lot of people that wanted to know like what a typical day looks like. Now, each of you hold very different roles. Eddie, I'm going to start with you. This person had specifically wanted to know what a typical day looks like as a UX UI designer. Could you let us know, like in that role, what your typical day was on average?
On average, yeah. Good question. I'm trying to remember. It's been so long. But yeah, I typically work with a product manager, and quite often we look through. So I used to work for Delivery Hero, which is like a food ordering platform app, and we would together like look through the funnel, the purchase funnel, for example, and to find out what which part that is not doing so well, and why. And so we deep dive and find out why, and then I would be doing some designing, come up with some hypothesis, and then also working with other engineers to discuss how we actually build these features, or running some experiments. So yeah, so I guess to sum it up, it'd be like working with product managers to look into some data, like some information, how users use our app, to designing, and then also, yeah, a lot of meetings with engineers and other stakeholders.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Jigyasa, how about you? What does a typical day look like for you, if there is one in your role currently?
That's not typical, but I'll give it a stab. It's far from typical, actually, depends on week to week. But my job is essentially about strategy and tactics. So where is it that we're going, and chart a path to get there? It's less about the day-to-day. It's less about, like, Eddie said, to actually sit down and conceptualize the design. It's more about, hey, this is a North Star. What do I do today so that 3 months from now, we actually have a shot at getting there? So I currently manage 4 teams, and I have 4 product managers that I frequently meet with, 4 engineering managers that I frequently work with, and I have a product peer, and I have a design peer. So a lot of this is in collaboration. So none of this is alone, like I said, which is why the triad is really important. So my typical day would be meeting at least a few of those people. So I like to spread around the one-on-ones. So I'm definitely meeting with the triads of different teams and my peers. And I do skip levels. So I want to talk to engineers directly. So let's say once in 3 weeks, I talk to an engineer. And then the typical part of it is usually strategy. So what are the projects currently on the horizon? Do they really match with where the company needs to go? Are we on track to getting those done? Managing up. So it's not just the folks that I work with, but the reporting that I have to make sure that stakeholders get. So it's all that, a mixture of that. And like I said, some weeks are heavy on just managing up, and some weeks are very heavy on working down there with my teams and just, hashing things out, making sure that we're on track. So there's no typical day really, but it's a large mix of so many things, but it's all fun.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, Lillian, round us out here. What does your typical day, if there is one, look like?
Sure. Yeah. So there is definitely a kind of a typical day. As a software engineer, I think generally it's a mixture of heads down coding time on whatever project I might be a part of at the time, and a mixture of that, as well as a lot of collaboration efforts with the team. That's that can range from wherever you're working, but luckily my current team at Contentful, we're very, very collaborative. We will hop on a call, to work together and pair program and code together and figure things out as we're kind of working through tickets and the project that we're the kind of end user product that we're developing. And so a lot of it is really just working through our current goals, and sprinkle in a few meetings here and there to kind of organize those goals collectively as a team. But really it's a lot of fun coding time and discovery work there.
Very cool. All right. Love to hear it. Thank you all so much for sharing. All right, we have time for probably one more question, and then we'll have to start winding down. All right. So a lot of people who join us today, unfortunately, probably are joining us because they're laid off and looking for, their next role. What would you recommend people do if they are finding themselves in a position of being laid off and trying to figure out how to get the next spot? What do you think they should be doing in the interim? Eddie, do you want to start us?
Sure. I think it's probably a good well, first of all, if you got laid off, that sucks. That's no good. But it's also, you can look at it as an opportunity to actually upskill. Think about the skills that you always think that you are lacking, whether it's communication or maybe presentation skill or whatnot. Then try to learn them, upskill yourself, and also stay current. Stay in touch with the latest trend in tech, and again AI. Of course, we learn more about it, and or even like build something. I always think that if you have you got time, if you build something, you will learn a lot from it. And also don't forget to network. Meetups or even on Discord, you can connect with the community and ask for help and build something, and then also ask for feedback, and then and I guess Lillian, do you have anything to cover?
Sure. Yeah, I want to add just one of the single best pieces of advice I was ever given with the job search process itself, and that is never rule yourself out, let others rule you out. And so this is just in terms of actually applying to a jobs itself. And I'm saying, like, basically, you know, even if the job posting is a senior engineer, etc., and you feel like you're more of a junior engineer, still apply, because I had experience with multiple jobs that I actually ended up getting that, you know, some people, even though they're looking for a senior engineer, they'll begin talking to a junior engineer, and then, you know, sort of things will work out that they'll be so interested in the skills that you're bringing that they'll actually make room for two junior engineers as opposed to one senior engineer. And that happened for 2 of my jobs that I ended up getting. And so I think that is one of the kind of things that I will die on a hill and kind of preach to everyone, is to never rule yourself out. Just let the hiring managers do that. Always kind of send that resume off, even though it can seem like it's going into the ether. It will work out, I know. Eventually.
Could not agree more. Jigyasa, how about you? What do you feel about this?
I think Eddie covered most of it. I'd say just spend this time to invest in yourself. You don't get these opportunities very often in your career. You barely get to take a break. So really do invest in yourself. Upskilling, even if a year from now, if you can explain that gap, so to speak, by learning something, having delivered something, having worked on a passion project, that's a really good utilization of your time. And the one other thing that I'll add to what Lillian was saying, that please don't take it personally. I know rejections are hard. I know getting laid off is really hard. And I feel for you, but it's really ever about the person themselves. It's really hard to detach the you from the professional that's been laid off, but you have to be objective. That's the only way to not let your spirit break, because that's the low point, not being laid off. There's plenty you can still do. You've got the potential. It's a factor of a lot of things. It's not just you. So just remember that.
Thank you for that. I think there's a lot of us that need to hear that sometimes. As somebody who has job hunted, oh God, so many years of my life for so many different roles. If you are a person that takes rejection hard, which I absolutely do, make yourself a little jar, and every time you get a no, put a quarter in it. At the end of the week, you may not have a job, but you will have enough to go buy yourself a fancy coffee drink. And that, for me, was the like, all right, well, they don't like me, but at least I get a fancy coffee drink out of it. I don't know why, that just worked for my brain. Okay. So whether it is a cookie or 10 cents in the swear jar or whatever it is, try and do something nice to yourself when you get those rejections, because death by 1,000 cuts is still death. So just don't do that to yourselves, y'all. All right, we have a couple minutes left before we have to chime out for today, but I just wanted to highlight a little bit more about Contentful. We got some answers from our guests today about how they would describe the company culture, their favorite part about working there. Eddie, I want to talk about your top tip for someone who's interviewing. Your tip is to relax. Can you give us an explanation or an example of how you've done that for yourself?
Sure. It's I know it sounds super easy. Oh, just relax. But I want to elaborate on this because I've been through some really daunting interviews. For example, one of them was at Amazon. First thing in the morning, I had to present in front of I don't know, a table of 10 people, and everyone just looking at me, super grumpy. And it was early in the morning, and I was really nervous, and I was really well prepared, but my brain just went blank. And somehow I kind of took a step back, and I kind of relaxed a little bit, and I just cracked a joke, actually, make fun of myself. And then all of a sudden, I just calmed down, and I was just looking at the whole interview completely from a different angle. Just kind of like, hey, I'm here to just talk about telling a story that it was true. I did this and I had fun, and I tell them why. Actually, in the end, it turned out to be great. So I guess my point is, if you take a step back and just like looking in, like, hey, there's no downside. Just, talk about it, and more like a two-way conversation. Just have fun. Just having a chat with someone who's into tech, and also yourself, your work experience. So I think that really helped me out.
I absolutely love that. Thank you, Eddie, so much. Lillian and Jigyasa, your questions and answers were absolutely just as amazing, but I want to make sure we're spending on time to respect everyone's calendars. So huge thank you to Eddie, Jigyasa, and Lillian from Contentful for joining us today. Thank you all so much. It was wonderful to get to learn from you, and I really hope we get to do this again soon.
Thanks. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
See ya.
Thanks.
All
Bye.
right, y'all, to all of our attendees, thank you all for joining us today. You all took time out of your day to do something special and on purpose for yourselves and your careers. That is not an easy thing to do. Not everyone does it in this day and age. So I hope that you, reward yourself a little bit for that. And again, thank you so much for spending time with Powerfly and Contentful this morning. Obviously, I have a job because you guys come to these events, but it's even more important that you're doing something for yourselves and hopefully learning about new opportunities and someplace that might be your next great fit. Now, if whether this was your first Power to Fly event or your 50th, I hope that you had even a little bit as much fun as I had on today's event. If this was your first, I really hope it won't be your last. If this was not your first Power to Fly meeting, then I cannot wait to see you back here on another event. Have a safe, happy, healthy rest of your day, week, and weekend, and we cannot wait to see you back here later, y'all. Bye.
See ya. Ciao.